Welcome back, everyone, to Open Line. We are talking about voting during a pandemic. There is massive voting underway right now. People all across the country are voting. People in Tennessee are voting. Huge turnout for early voting, and that's great. How is the pandemic impacting that? And just what should you expect? If you want to call in, tell us what you experienced as you voted. That would be great. We have two people who can talk about this issue. Don Schluckebier with Think Tennessee, and Marian Ott, president of the Tennessee League of Women Voters. And I wanted, all right, Marian, you indicated there are three counties in our viewing area where things may be a little different this year: Rutherford, Williamson, and Wilson. So we probably have plenty of viewers in those counties. How are things different there?
So in those three counties, they have what are called vote centers. Think early voting. So in those three counties, you can go to any one of however many vote centers they have. You don't have an assigned polling place like we do in Davidson County. And that's great in those counties. If you have an address change within the county, you can go there. If you were, I think in Rutherford County, which was the first county that did it, their thought was, oh, people commute into Nashville, and if there's a traffic jam on election night, they could maybe get into the county before 7, but they might not get to the other side of the county where they live. So they could just stop at the first vote center and vote. So it's seen as a convenience for the voters.
Do you see that as something that may happen all across the state?
I think it might get expanded into some counties, but there's some pretty technical requirements that have to be met in order to be able to do that. Starting with, you have to have all your polling places at a facility that has what's called a T-line, because we never ever have any kind of voting information done Wi-Fi, and not every county can find enough polling places like that. In Rutherford, all their polling places, or most of them, are in schools, and schools have such capacity. So it may not be possible. And of course, in some of the rural counties, they don't have that kind of internet capability.
All right, we have several calls, so I'm just going to go to some of the calls now. Let's go to Donna. Hello, Donna?
Yes, hello.
Go right ahead.
My question is this. I've seen in the news with several people of the postal service, the workers, they're already been caught dumping bags of ballots and this and that. With that going on, how can this be a fair election either way?
Okay, the president's talking about that. That's certainly in the news. And so, Don, that makes people really anxious and concerned. And the question from her is, how can it be a fair election? What do you know about this?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a really good question and a really good concern. And I would also defer to Marian to jump in here too. But I think, Marian mentioned that there are people involved in the process. And so there are mistakes and there are maybe some ill intentions, but generally the structure of the process is such that there's an element of trust that is required in the system, and things like this, when stories like this come out, that definitely sort of chips away at that trust. And so I hear the concern from Donna, and I think it's a valid one. I think in Tennessee, like we mentioned, absentee ballots are required to be delivered through the mail. Potentially one sort of, I don't want to say workaround, but one option. So we mentioned that absentee ballots are mailed to the Voter and Election Commission and then mailed back to the Election Commission. And so there's a lot of trust in the Postal Service to be able to deliver that. And we've heard from our postal workers and sort of nationally at the level too, that they are giving priority to mail ballots and to mail information. And so I think there's just a level of trust in the system that it'll work out. But I don't know how to address those concerns. Marian, maybe you can.
Well, I have a couple of things to say. So first, in Tennessee, I'll just remind you that you can track your ballot. Mm-hmm. So you can go online and confirm that they have received your ballot. If it's November 3rd and you can't see that they've gotten your ballot, I urge you to go to the polls and request a provisional ballot. You'll have to vote on paper, but they will then take your provisional ballot and compare it to the absentee ballot rolls. And if they did not get your absentee ballot, your provisional ballot will count. Mm-hmm. And then Don has talked about how the post office is aware of the importance of the ballots and supposedly putting some more attention on this. I think the reason stories like mail getting put in a dumpster that we all read about make the news so much is that fortunately they're pretty rare, and it's more of a man bites dog story, so it gets that kind of play. Not that it isn't a serious matter, it is, and all I know is the same as everyone else that's read in the news. But I do believe that pretty serious consequences are in the either happened or are going to happen to those that were responsible for that. But again, check to make sure your ballot was received, and if not, vote provisional.
So if somebody is sitting at home and they say, boy, I heard that there were ballots that were in a dumpster somewhere, I don't think this whole thing is on the up and up, and I'm not going to vote, that would be the absolute wrong response. Is that right?
Absolutely. We talked about election security, and the biggest, and I think Don and I were at the same briefing from the FBI about election security. The thing they were worried about the most was chaos. And we shouldn't let chaos or the perception of chaos get in the way of our very important right and duty as citizens to go vote. So check that your ballot got there, but by all means, make sure your voice is heard and show up and vote.
Vote.
I'm passionate enough about that.
Right. Okay, very good. That's interesting. So you were in all right, we have to take a break because I went so long. But we're going to take a break. Then we have Rob on the line. Rob, we'll get to your call and others. Take a break. Be back right after this.